We've all heard the phrase, it's about the journey, not the destination, which to me is another way of saying it's the process and not the goal.
And if you're process focused when you're looking to, let's say, recover from something or expand your awareness, your spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, whatever it is that you're trying to do, there will be levels and stages.
Welcome to the Frequency Files. Thanks for joining us as we explore the vibrations, forms, and creations and mechanisms behind them that inform the nature of existence. I've been thinking, as you've grown and evolved in this life and in your practices, what's a truth that you maybe once resisted that has now become a cornerstone of your life or something that is more integrated into your experience?
I think I was struggling with that for a minute. And then I realized actually that the truth is that we are multi-dimensional beings. There is no cause and effect. There's only cause and cause. Okay, so karma doesn't exist. We're taught it doesn't exist in the way that the West is taught that it exists. So those things. But I think the biggest thing that I resisted, because it's so hard to live, is that we are absolutely 100% responsible for everything that we experience. That is the hardest one, because our identities are so strong and the messages that we get from the outside,
Yeah.
contrived, deliberate messages that we do not have control, whether these messages come from religion or culture or the media. We are told we do not have control over our lives and our outcomes, and the opposite is true. The converse is absolutely true. However, to live that life of freedom, we have to accept that we are 100% responsible for what happens to us, and that the egoic self, the bit that lives with your boyfriend and has the dog and has the cat and the kids have to go to school, there's that everyday thing is more of an avatar of your soul energy and your soul purpose than it is who you are. And that responsibility comes from, when I say we are 100% responsible, we have to take a different perspective, standpoint in life, and understand that we are souls. It's no good saying we're souls having a human experience. No, it's not even that simple. Okay, because people then they assume that the human experience is the most important experience. The actual most important experience is the agreement. Some people call them contracts, but the agreement, the mission that this life has to inform the soul, to inform the spirit, and to inform the divine. And it's really fascinating to me. So when things go, this planet is not meant to be heaven on earth. This planet is contrasted for a reason, because this is what it's about. It is not a school. We're not here to learn anything. We are here to experience and expand our soul, spirit, and divine nature. And also, some people will say, when you're an eternal, everlasting being, you get quite bored. So you have to create a board game or a game, and the game of life is what we live. But that responsibility thing, to be 100% responsible for oneself, means that when shit happens, as we will say, oh, the shit happened, right? We have to allow ourselves to understand that that is a consequence of our experiencing a theme in our lives in its totality. So if you think about it, what is love? And I mean human love. Okay, I don't mean divine love. That's a whole different concept. But if we come in with a contract or an agreement from our soul space, not karma, just an agreement, in this lifetime, this avatar Maya, this avatar Sarah, is going to experience the totality of love. Ah, sounds great, doesn't it? Until you realize that that also encompasses jealousy, greed, envy, hate, pain, betrayal, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so that lifetime becomes a choice. We are responsible for doing things, experiencing things as thoroughly as we can in order to move on to the next bit. And the bit where we become irresponsible or unaware is where we hold on to an experience, and it then repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats because we will not complete it, because we have an egoic agenda attached to it. But it's that thing of we are everlasting, immortal beings, and we are 100% responsible for what we create. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, you know, so many people have different relationships, or may have different reactions to that concept, right? Because it's a really strong one. But something that just keeps springing to my mind is really just going back to the semantics of responsible, the ability to respond in presence each moment, like without a story.
It's very difficult, Sarah, because those stories they construct, they're the structure of our
Yeah.
identity. And the identity feeds the story, and the story feeds the identity, but the story and the identity is not the soul. It is not the big picture. And I have had people say to me, well, what, you know, war, murder, rape, etc., and I just look at it and go, it's very hard as a human being, or as an avatar human being aspect of a soul, of a spirit, of the divine, to look at it from a wider perspective where we don't die. And it's a moment, a heartbeat, a micro breath of time where that person experiences that hell. Okay. And I've been through some really, really tough times myself. And it's a question I've had to really think through, because physical violence, physical pain, trauma, and even in my case, not being fed, that's another story, are very traumatic for a physical body, because the physical body is designed only to survive. The biology of the physical body is to basically stay alive, eat, reproduce, rinse, repeat, die. And it has a biological imperative to survive, and it's designed to learn the best survival mechanisms and techniques. And this is also worth talking about in a minute, but this is also why people can't grow and don't grow easily, because the brain is designed to keep you safe, and it will repeat over and over again experiences, thoughts, ideas that keep it safe and do not challenge the status quo in order to stay alive. Yeah. And when you think that the brain has access to 40 billion bits of information a minute, and we only access 2,000 at any one time, 2,000 bits of information. Think about a big house and a letterbox. So we get that letterbox, that's it, and that view. Unless we stretch ourselves every day. 4 billion bits down to 2,000 bits is what we process. And not only do we only get 2,000 bits to process, it's the same 2,000 bits over and over again. So we are literally like vinyl records with all those grooves, and we are literally at that bit where it's stuck, you know, it goes blip, 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 that's it. So the potential is that whole vinyl record, A side, B side, with all the variety of however many minutes that record plays, but we're stuck in that the bit where it's scratched. And if we can understand that, and understand that the only way to successfully change and grow is to realize that we are not that we are that immortal soul, spirit, divine energy that runs through the whole universe, things begin to make more sense and growth becomes easier, because that's why we're here as these avatars. We are here to inform the soul, the spirit, and the divine of what the heck is going on planet Earth. And there's much more complexity to it, but we could talk about it, so we won't. But that's the simple side of it. So there has, in my book, this is me, I have to accept that I am more than that scratch on the record, because I can see through my own evolution, and from where I was, I'm 63 now, and this journey into this realm started in earnest when I was 9, but I was already aware of, I would say, ghosts and various other entities before I had that experience of dying. And nothing would make sense in my world or from my philosophy if all we were was what some people called, rather, I don't like the word meat suit, but some people refer to this body as a meat suit. It's so much more than that. It's such a complex intelligence, and everything that we are, in all our magnificence as energetic and spiritual and emotional beings, rests in this magnificent body. We have access to everything that we are through this magnificent body and through this brain. To call it a meat suit's a bit disrespectful, I think. Yeah, and I think that that's the other thing that perhaps people might like to consider, that even when their body is in trouble, I have had a series of chronic conditions over time, but I'm now understanding, particularly since COVID, that I'm poisoned. We're all poisoned by the environment that we're in. There are ways of resolving that. That's another conversation. But we are poisoned, and that which is in our bodies through our food and the air that we breathe, and the water that we drink, and the medicines that we take, and the vaccinations that we may or may have not had, actually break down the cell structure of this magnificent vehicle. And if one does not understand how it's possible to remove the toxins without harming the body in the process, that's the key. And if one doesn't understand how to feed the cells properly, and by the way, that's not through food, that's another conversation, we cannot thrive in this body. So we can thrive energetically, spiritually, etc., but we cannot actually extend our life, and we cannot remove chronic illness that is caused by environmental pollutants without taking specific actions. And one other thing I'm going to just toss in is that 95% that we are not, that 95%, we cannot heal anything that is not ours to heal. So if we are carrying someone else's emotional state and it's playing out through the body as acne, as a stomach ulcer, as cancer, and it's not healing, it's because it's not yours. So that's another reason why it's really important to understand the difference between yourself and everyone else, and how to become more of a vessel of you and hold that you in this vessel. Then you can heal properly, then you can thrive.
What are some pathways for us to, and I know you've mentioned some pathways to becoming ourselves more and anchoring self-sovereignty and investing in our spiritual development and connecting in. How do we do this at a more macro scale, or in terms of a systems change type
Okay.
level.
Well, I'm going to talk about the concepts I work with and what I've noticed over the years as a way of answering that question. Um, so what I noticed was that it doesn't seem to matter, and anybody that's listening here who's been into personal growth and or personal development for any length of time will know that they can spend a lot of money and a lot of time doing a course, doing a thing, and it doesn't stick. So I've talked to people, I've had clients who are my age and have been working for 30 years to shift to something. And they go and they do a webinar, a thing, a Tony Robbins, a Dean Graziosi, even Joe
Yeah.
Dispenza, although his work is really evolving now, and a few others, so the big gurus, and they find that the work doesn't stick. Okay, so they get a lovely result and they shift, something shifts, and then the world takes over again. Okay, and what I've noticed, and what I noticed even working with at neurolinguistic programming and psychosynthesis and map work and lots of disciplines that I've studied over the years, body work, reflexology, massage, is that people didn't have a mechanism for integration, and they didn't have foundations, a core foundation, skill or ability that allowed them to be in a state that was so receptive that their ego released them from its prison. Okay, so I watched this and I thought, let me see which of my students and clients and myself, which are actually getting longer lasting or permanent change. And I realized we all had the same 4 or 5 skills. And those of us that were practicing those 4 or 5 skills or had made them our own were getting quantum leaps. So not just small incremental shifts of change and then pulled back into the problem. They were getting quantum leaps in their growth and their development and shift. And really, it comes down to the foundations for thriving. It comes down to this practice of knowing the difference between yourself and everyone else, understanding and experiencing that you are the master of your energy, and then learning how that energy serves you and doesn't serve you. It all sounds complicated, it really isn't. And then the third thing is focus, which is the antidote to distraction and the modern world, right? Absolute focus, to learn to focus, putting the 3 together. And once those 3 come together in a regular practice, what happens is you reach this 0 point that I talked about. And in that 0 point, you can make miracles happen in your own world because you're coming from a place of absolute neutrality and possibility. And it's in that neutrality and in that absence of charge, okay, no positive, no negative, no yes, no no, no up, no down, no right, no wrong, in that neutrality and that presence, change becomes a permanent thing. You can reprogram from that space. You rewrite the operating system of your brain. And from there, everything's different.
I love it because what you tapped into there is again, the contexts that individuals have to be in for this work to land, anchor, and stay and maintain itself. Which,
Yes, and it's
as you mentioned, like how many people and ourselves as well have done or experienced lots of things that are amazing, and then we slip back into we might have made incremental shifts, but those powerful shifts that integrate and stay. And I think the safety element is a massive one, whether it's real or perceived. Our bodies or our fields don't always know the difference. And so it doesn't, yeah, it's like, it's a really interesting one. And
I think, Sarah, if I may say, because you have to take it back to, I am 100% responsible for my experience.
yeah,
I am 100% responsible for my outcomes. I am 100% responsible for what I'm creating.
yeah,
And people will say, well, I didn't create that. That was done to me. And I would say it's a pattern in your field that holds you and anchors you in a state that your brain believes will keep you alive.
yeah,
And I'll give an example of this with myself. So over the years, I'm smiling, I'm laughing at myself here. Okay. It is a challenging thing to have a brain that survived dying, and to
mm,
have a personality and a soul that wishes to expand with great rapidity. Okay. Because I will take myself to the edge over and over again. And what happens, what I've noticed over the years, and I've seen it with others, is your brain, your psyche will take you back to the thing, the most dramatic thing that you survived. Okay, so if you broke a leg and it stopped you from taking that round the world trip through the Amazon jungle and blah, 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 and your brain decided that wasn't safe, every time you go to do something that is radically fun for you, you'll have an accident. You know, ask people around them, what happens when, okay? Or if and it will show up in different ways. So I have friends
mm,
who always end up with plane delays, or their holidays go I'll send over whatever, because on some level their psyche doesn't want them to relax and have fun and take their eye off the ball. Okay,
yeah,
because they've survived something in that experience. So for me, let's go back. I survived dying and being out of body. So when I am stretched, or when I wish to grow very fast or get over something, what does my body create? It creates a physical emergency, sometimes a slow drip, which are the worst ones, and others an extreme event. Now, remember, I didn't die permanently. So my body will only take me up to, oh, she's going to die and we're going to have her in a deep trance, or she's going to be off with the fairies for a week. And it does that by, in me, producing extremely high temperatures. So COVID was a massive expansion for me. I've had it 5 times, and 4 times I had temperatures of just shy of 104 for about 4 days at a time. And I was out there with my soul creating change. And so for me, COVID has been incredibly troubling, because I end up with a post-COVID thing, and a long COVID issue. But it has been a period from 2020 till now where I have exponentially been able to grow into my soul self and bring that soul self knowledge into this magnificent vehicle, and come at the world from a different place without the accoutrements of the distractions of it, and the pains of it, and the judgments of it. So the last 5 years for me have been a massive tipping point in growth, because my brain takes me back to being thrown out of my body and dying, usually with a very high temperature. Okay. And then having to integrate and rest and recuperate after the effect. So the growth has been massive. And I'm a very different person in my, not just in my identity and personality. So more and more of Maya, the real Maya, shines through now, which you don't really see. You haven't met the wacky, wild, irreverent, overexcitable me. And that's another piece we can do for another day. But so just to repeat, your body will take you back. Your brain will create an experience for you that you survived. And the more risk you want to take, the more it takes you down that avenue of, oh no, we're gonna kill you again, or we're gonna break a leg, or we're gonna get stuck, or we're gonna fail an exam, or you're gonna get fired at work so you don't have to take on more responsibility, or okay. And what I love about that is that once one understands that it is the more primitive aspect of the brain, you can work with that. So when I realized this in that format, in those words, oh, it's going to take me back to the most dangerous experience I ever had. It's going to take me through that again and remind me how unsafe the world is. I created an image in my head. And I said, well, people talk about, the brain stem, and they talk about the lizard brain, don't they? They talk about that age. So I created in this hand, and I still see it, a tree frog. Okay, a bright green tree frog with orange feet. And I called him Fred. And I became very, very aware that if I started to get certain sensations and feelings in my body, that my body was saying, it's not safe, it's not safe. So I yanked. So for a whole week, I said to everybody, here, will you meet Fred? Fred is my lizard brain. And he's right up here now. And we have a mechanism. And now when he gets nervous, he taps his little feet and does a dance. So I would get this tapping in my hand at the point where my body was going to, or my psyche was going to start to create a halting event. Let's halt Maya in her tracks. So I then sit there with Fred and I go, thank you for letting me know it's dangerous. I really understand that you think it's dangerous. I am going to take full responsibility for the outcome, and I'd like to take a couple of steps forward. Can we do that? And if it's safe, then we take a few more. It's been phenomenal. So all my friends laugh now, and I go, oh, Fred's up. And now they've all got their own Freds, all my very close friends. So we all have this mechanism for communicating with the deep, deep, out of conscious part of the brain that wants to keep us safe. And it's, if you think about it in the same way that you get a yappy dog, and you get a dog and it notices that there's something or someone through the curtains, and they can hear sounds outside, and it starts to yap and scream and run around in circles and wants to get your attention. But very often, if you then say to the dog, oh, it's the postman, it's Fred, it's Auntie, and they go, oh, and their tail wags and they stop and they go off and have a drink. It's the same concept. So I've found a way of informing that part of me that so desperately wants to keep me safe that it stops me, what people call self-sabotage, right? I found a way of communicating with it through self-awareness and through slowing myself down. So I notice rather than pushing through life, okay, which was also a mistake that I had to learn, is that we are here to smell the roses, not to run a speed marathon, okay? So the tortoise was right, and the hare lost the race, right? It's actually like that. Slow down, get more out of it. Less is more. And that's another thing that I help people with. We do that in group workshops where we help people to understand how they can befriend their neurology and their neurobiology. They can befriend it so that they have more scope for growth.
Yeah, I love that. And to work with our systems and not against them.
I think that's, from what you did, that's really funny, because actually it's the opposite. Because what we are working against the system when we have a Fred. So what's natural to us is the unconscious mind and the lizard, what people call the lizard brain, but it isn't. The lizard brain, what's natural is for it to stop us. So we are actually working against our nature and training our nature to be more flexible.
Yeah, okay. I suppose I see it as like we're understanding what the operating system is. And so we're going, okay, that's how you work. I'm going to work with that. to get you on side. But I yeah, okay. I hear what
Yes,
you
but it's converse. It's a little bit converse. You have to get it because we do have to. This is a very uncomfortable truth for most people. We have to allow our what people call our ego. People say, well, I've got to get rid of my ego. Well, you can't get rid of your ego because your ego is what allows you to understand how the world works.
mm,
That's the individualization. But you definitely do need to understand that the aspects of the personality may need to completely fall away in the same way that a caterpillar becomes a butterfly.
mm,
Okay, uh, you may have to desist from being a caterpillar. In
yeah.
fact, you must desist from being a caterpillar
Yeah.
to become a butterfly. You must
Yeah.
desist from being a tadpole to become a frog. You must desist from being a victim to your own life or to others' demands in order to thrive in your true nature. So,
Mm,
so really, growth in life is a lot of mini deaths.
yeah.
Okay, and people don't understand, like a deciduous tree loses its leaves every winter and has to go through the process of almost death and rebirth every single year, different phases. Bulbs produce daffodils, the daffodils absorb nutrition from the sun, and that feeds the bulb, and the bulb retreats, and then it comes back again. People do not see themselves in that way, but that's actually what's required of us to
Mm,
reach our potential.
mm,
And of course, there are these quantum leaps that you can take, in
mm,
life. And I think we get to the point, in life where that there is a tipping point where your identity and your personalities, because let's face it, we have a different personality, don't we, in different circumstances, when we're comfortable, where we're doing our own thing, where we're under pressure, but where these identities and personalities get an opportunity to test themselves in a different experience or environment. And I mean, I find it extraordinary because what I see in the world is those individuals that stretch themselves, understand much more about what they're capable of than the average individual. And not that there's anything wrong with living an average life. I often look around me and go, gosh, I wish I wasn't so ambitious. And I don't mean ambitious in the world. I'm spiritually ambitious. I'm psychologically ambitious. I'm more interested in that. I want to find out how far I can go, where my brain can take me, where my spirit and energy can take me. I'm more interested in that than I am in building an Amazon empire. But I'm quite certain that if I took that level of ambition and applied it in another area, I would be just as successful because I have that capacity to shed that which is not where I want to be, or
mm,
to shed that which is not conducive to me discovering what's possible.
mm.
That's a learned skill.
Yeah. What advice would you have for people who find that difficult or know that there's parts of them that are just hanging out to die and they've got resistance or they're not ready to let go or on some level, but they would love to or they'd love to edge closer to that?
Okay, so I'm smiling. I know that we're doing audio here. But I'm smiling because I'm just going to repeat. Firstly, there is nothing wrong with living a mediocre, comfortable, soft, unstretched life. Okay, and there's no judgment in that because you may have chosen that for this lifetime. You may have had several lifetimes where you've been a warrior or been a dragon rider and saving the world from God knows what else in another being, another existence. And this life may be your fallow life, the life where it's meant to be fallow. Okay, that's the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Secondly, the way that we are entrained to think is that we must succeed, we must be the best, and we must compete. Okay, and none of that's true. It's just a construct, right? That's another piece that I'd like people to hear, right? We are trained to think that if we don't succeed, we're losers, and then we create shame and various other negative emotions, and we don't always, therefore, be present to ourselves and understand what is possible for us, because we're so in self-judgment and we're so in stress. So the first thing is to ask the question, do I really want this? Whatever it is, do I really want this? Because if you really want it, the challenge is you have to narrow your focus. I just made a mountain shape with my hands. You have to narrow your focus. You have to go to the top of the pyramid. Okay, so the kid that wants to swim for Australia in the Olympics has to stop doing 90% of what their companions and compatriots do in their life in order to be at a skill level and a capacity to be in that position. Okay, so you can be a swimmer and you can love to swim and you can be a competition swimmer. You can be part of a swimming team. It's a whole different level to going for gold. Okay, so when you think about the choices that people make in life and you look at where and how people are successful, if you were a fly on the wall, you would see how narrow their lives are. Narrow and deep. So my question to whoever's listening is, do you want that? Do you want narrow and deep, or do you want wide and different? Okay, because people will hear the word average and go, oh, that means I'm this, I'm that. They will judge themselves with that word of average. And all that means is you are comfortable in a wider series of experiences and you allow yourself a wider series of experiences. If you wish to become a concert pianist, what is it that our friend Chris was talking to me about the other day? I think he said he was going to have to find time to practice for another 4 or 5 hours a day. And he realized that that was not what he wanted to do. Okay, so he took the pressure off himself immediately to, and the judgment that he wasn't doing what he thought he ought to do, because so actually, do you really want to be spending at the moment 4 or 5 hours a day playing the piano? No, I want to work more with clients. Great. Pressure off. Okay. If I wanted to be a Picasso, I would have to spend every day painting, working with color, looking at things in a different way, in my own space, in my own bubble, doing my own thing, happy to get lost in the creative art of painting in a way that from my soul and my space that was expressing something greater than the average human condition. What does that mean? My family life suffers. Probably. Okay. What do we become obsessed about? Where do we focus our attention? If I wanted to be a poker player that won all these huge tournaments and made my fortune doing it, I'd just spend all day, all week, all month, all life playing poker, like people who play bridge. They're obsessed. So my question is, do you really want this? If you feel underachieved in life, why do you feel underachieved? Is it, you should question yourself, is this because somebody told me I ought to, ... Is somebody trying to vicariously live through me because they didn't or couldn't or wouldn't? Is this my personal choice, or am I fulfilling somebody else's ambition? It's because I'll repeat what I said at the beginning, is if you wish to achieve anything in an outstanding fashion, The way forward is know the difference between yourself and everyone else, understand that you are the master of your energy, and focus. Okay. And when you have those three things in place, you will find naturally you are making choices that narrow your vision and narrow your activities. And if you are not prepared to stop doing 90% of what that person that is nicely average and comfortable is doing, if you want something else for yourself, there is a cost, and there is, some people would say, a sacrifice. So for me, I am very spiritually ambitious. My world revolves, I do not do therapy work. I do not do this. I am this work. People say this to me. Somebody said to me years ago, the difference between you, Maya, and all the other therapists and coaches I know is that they do coaching, they do therapy, they've learned techniques, they apply techniques. You are it. You live it. You, from every molecule of your physical body and from every wave in your quantum field. That's my, so I am an Olympian in the field. I am. I mean, it's funny for me to say it, but having just, in my field, I am an Olympian. Okay, and that doesn't make me better than anyone else in the field, because people who want a different level of experience of growth would not do well with me, because I have an ambition for myself and my clients. And I say, as you know, Sarah, I say to people, bring me the stickiest thing. Bring me the thing that you cannot get over in your life, and we will work on that and figure that out, because that's the thing that holds. It's like the sun holding the solar system together. Once the sun is gone, the planets fly off into space. So for me, bring me the thing you can't get past, and understand that if we deal with that, you will not be the same person in the same identity, living the same life that you lived before. So be sure that that's what you want. Where did that come from? You asked a question, you got a very long answer that time, right? Very well.
I love it. Well, you went with the flow on that, and I can't remember what I asked. I think it was around people having the permission to let things go, or to let parts of themselves die. And
I think
I
you
think
asked.
in saying in what you brought out, you were asking them which parts of themselves want to live.
Do you know? I don't. That's a lovely way of putting it, and I think I don't often think, so this is challenging for me. I think what I heard, I believe what. No, I seriously, I don't. If I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I'm in my ego. So what happens is that, and there's nothing wrong with me being in my ego, except my ego is not my preferred space,
Yeah.
right? So what happens with me is I don't sit and I don't think about things and churn things around and round. I'll have an experience, do something, think I'd like to create something else. I prefer a different way of being this week in the world. I'd like to discover what it is to apply compassion to everything, including myself. For instance, that might be my mission for the week. I do this to myself, by the way. And then I will actively seek out and notice where compassion would be more useful, and where I'm naturally compassionate, and where perhaps that the compassion can't flow because there is some form of judgment or something. Okay. And I think that most people live by default. They don't live their lives deliberately. And this is what
Yeah.
I mean by being spiritually ambitious. So I do most of the time, not all of the times. So let's say 75% of the time, if I'm being generous with myself, I live deliberately and consciously. And then there's the 25% where I get pissed off because somebody blew something up and there's another thing going on over there, or there's some political thing that, or some whatever. I'll get distracted from my understanding that I am the master creator in my world, and I get to experience whatever it is I want, and I get to help other people experience what they prefer and what they want rather than what they are default creating. And I think that what you asked me was, if people are stuck, if people are not achieving what they want to achieve, if they think that they want something else out of life, how do they go about that? And my response was, be absolutely clear on the consequences of your choices, because the more you want something that's going to replace something else, the more you must be willing to release that which you know in order to become that which you prefer. That's tying it up in a, just be clear. So I have clients who came to me with very clear ambition, and over a period of time they've achieved that ambition. And sometimes we need to take a break because they have to adjust to what they're releasing from themselves. It's not what they're integrating in, it's what they're letting go of, because what you naturally make space for with intention, that energy will flow in. Okay, so that's just a simple fact. And then I have other clients, friends over the years who I won't work with anymore because they get to the crux point of where they could have what they prefer and they bail. And I have no problem with them bailing, but I have a problem with them bailing around me, right? As a coach or therapist, because we've put in an X amount of energy, X amount of space, and they choose to go back in the cave. And that's absolutely fine, but please don't enroll me in that process. Yeah. So I've also learned over the years not to offer anyone anything unless they ask, and then to qualify that asking with questions that allow me to understand where people are in their thinking process and their commitment process around it. Some people, it's like climbing a flight of stairs, and their commitment level goes up as they achieve each step. And other people want to know that they can rush to the top and then fall down all the way because they didn't do what was required to allow their limbic system and their gecko, their inner gecko, enough room to feel safe. And others get halfway up the mountain and go, you know what, this isn't for me. And that's fine. Because one's experience is one's experience. The problems come about when people judge themselves in their process because they're goal focused, end result goal focused, instead of process focused. And if you're process focused when you're looking to, let's say, recover from something or expand your awareness, your spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, whatever it is that you're trying to do, that there will be levels and stages. And we need to give ourselves a break once in a while, or we burn out, or we make ourselves sick, or we miss the signals that we're moving too fast. But I think that's what you were saying is that, well, if people are stuck, how can we help them move forward? And I'm just compassionate enough to say, be clear, be sure. What's that saying? Be careful what you wish for.
You might get it.
Yeah. And when you look at the people who, for instance, win large amounts of money on the lottery, and then 2 years later they're more broke than they were before they got the money. Yeah. And that's generally a signal or a sign that what they wanted really, they wanted something different, but they actually desperately miss who and what they were when they were not sloshing in money. Yeah. And I think that to be wealthy, to have great wealth, or to have a large amount of money is a very different experience. You are a very different person than the person who's surviving paycheck to paycheck. Your mentality has to shift. The way that you think about life has to shift if you're going to enjoy it. who you hang out with, if you're going to keep that money, or you're going to keep your health, or you're going to, right? Whatever it is, if you do not replace the things that you had in your life with something else that is as emotionally satisfying, you will end up where you started. So it's nothing to do with mindset. It's to do with emotional set point and the fact that you are willing to evolve beyond that which you know yourself as now. I sound quite deep, don't I? Gosh. Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, you know, as I said, I'm 63 and I've been actively, consciously doing this since I was 9. So I have a lot of years of practice. And I guess I also now, having had this 5 years of this COVID situation, with COVID teaching me, how can I put this? What I've learned is to choose carefully when you're physically restricted, or you're in pain, but particularly for me, there is a physical mobility restriction aspect to this virus. You learn, if you only have an hour a day where you function properly, you learn and discover very quickly what's important to you to do in that hour.
Yeah.
Narrow focus, right? So, and then you learn, if you're having trouble with muscle movement, which is, you know, you learn how many minutes you can work out very quickly, because sometimes it's 2 minutes and that's all you can do every day for a week is 2 minutes of exercise on a vibroplate or on a bicycle, because 3 minutes takes you back 5 days and you can't move. So you learn very quickly what is optimal, what is important, what is preferable, and you learn to let go of all the extraneous noise. So it's been a gift. All of this constraint and restriction has been a gift. And luckily, I had the capacity to focus before and the capacity to pay attention. So it was an ideal situation for me from a health perspective, and a bringing me to the point of leaving my body, out of body experiences rather than near-death experiences, to make a point. My psyche and my energy making a point, and then my spiritual training coming in and working with my own not employed, but what's the word? Overlaid restrictions. So the belief systems that I had, or the experiences that I had, come in and work with the I'm going to put errors in judgment or misinformation in my own system, my assumptions, my unproven theories in myself about life, universe, everything, and to come in and work from a shamanic perspective with myself. I've had a few laughs with myself, phoned up friends afterwards and go, you wouldn't believe what I just did. And then they'll go, what did you just do? And I went, I completely changed my pre-birth experience. And my mother is now understands the energy of being a mother bear, fiercely protective of me rather than fiercely critical. And you know what? In the 3 years since I did those exercises inside the womb, shape of water, I call it, you know, working with the shape of the molecules of water inside the womb and changing those, and having the baby then grow before birth in an environment that allows it to thrive moving forward, rather than being so already pre-programmed by the mother. Extraordinary changes in people's personalities. That mother wound, we'll have another conversation about it another day. That mother wound is really critical to how people, but particularly women, thrive in life or don't. Yeah, and it is a wound. We are all, you know, it is a wound that comes in. And the father stuff, which I've recently experienced, that rejigging of reclaiming the divine masculine, and reclaiming my relationship with a father that I knew but didn't know, because who he really was not who he was by the time I came along. So his trauma and his damage is what I knew. And as I grew to know him from an earlier history, it changed my whole relationship with the masculine in me.
Mm,
And which means I'm more grounded, I'm more solid, I'm more comfortable, I'm more relaxed, I feel safe in the world, in a way that I had no clue that I could feel safe.
mm,
And I think that that's it, that to be able to pass that on to others is also a major gift, because most people don't feel safe in the world and they don't understand how to feel safe in the world. And I didn't until 3 months ago. So this is quite new.
wow.
And what a delight, how exciting to feel safe and comfortable and not stressed about anything at all. People think I've had a complete change of personality. Um, Not that I was stressed, it's just I was quite pedantic and structured and rigid in a normally self-protective mechanism, as most people are. We have the way we do things in the world, and all of a sudden I'm fluid in that same environment. People around me are quite confused, and I laugh at their confusion and then say, well, shall I go back to snapping and snarling and getting cross? And they go, no, please don't. Yeah, we're all human, aren't we, in our own ways. We all have this avatar that we live with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Maya, thank you so much for today. I just love the journey you've taken us through in not only like sharing really deeply about your personal expansion path, the way that you work with individuals, the groups that you worked with, and the ripple effects that that had in such tangible ways and continues to have, and also the invitations to people on how they can apply these principles and gain deeper insights on their expansion journeys is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, Sarah, it's really a pleasure to have, for, for me to have you hold space for me to articulate who I am, how I am, and how I function in this world, because specifically, not just my story, because there has been such a deep shift and change, and because some of that change is recent and I'm still understanding it, observing myself in the newness of this new frequency and energy that I am, and observing what works, what I prefer and what doesn't. So I'm shifting in my own sands, which is quite lovely. And what I have learned from that, if I may just say, is working with clients in that place, or finding a way to support clients to be in that experience for themselves, is probably the most healing thing I've ever seen. I feel it a massive privilege to help people discover who they are becoming and how they are adjusting in this world as it is itself adjusting to a
Yeah.
new way of being, and a new era. And to allow people to find within them that peace, space, and certainty that is so missing from the outside environment. It's going to be very exciting moving forward, the way that the work, the way that I move more into groups again, and find vehicles through which to help people thrive within themselves, within their heart, their mind, their body, and actually their finances, through a different way of looking at the world. It's becoming very exciting and very real now. It's lovely.
Amazing.
Mm.
Amazing. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I look forward to seeing the next chapters unfold.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'll probably be witness to some of them yourself, and no doubt that we will do some more work together, because that's on the cards. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how much more space and spaciousness unravels for you, and then what fills that space.
Yes. Let's wait and watch and see.
Yeah. Thanks again. It's been awesome. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.